Thank you for agreeing to do this. I'm excited. I'm excited about this interview.
Yeah, it sounded really fun. So I'm glad you thought of me.
Yeah. And so as I think I mentioned, and it may have given you this indicator that this is being recorded right now. And so are you ready to get started?
Sure, yeah, sure.
Okay. So I have a whole lot of questions. So some of this might feel a little bit like a rapid fire round.
Okay.
Yeah, some of these are light. They might not take a lot of thought. For others, it might take more thought, in which case, feel free to pause and think about it. Um, for any of them, like share to the extent that you're comfortable sharing. If you want to skip a question, we can do that. But overall, it would be great if you sort of err on the side of being vulnerable, transparent, authentic. I think that will get the most out of this. That's
Okay, cool. Yeah.
so my first question is, what were you doing just before this call?
I I was checking in on my team.
Okay.
Um, so I co-lead a team with 12 people, and I have 4 direct reports. And a lot of us are on the West Coast. So yeah, a lot of my job as a manager recently, or the way I've defined it recently, is a bit more maternal, I think, than normal. Just lots of checking on people, hoping people can be like sane and keep, doing what they want to do. So yeah, I was just checking in on people and telling them to drink water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your daily routine like?
Um, well, like a lot of people, I work from home. I actually was working from home way before Google made it a thing that was happening. I had sort of an exception to be able to work from home because I really, really don't like the open floor plans, and um, some people can be a lot more productive at home, and some people can be a lot less productive. And I'm definitely in the more productive camp. I have my own office, so I get up, I go outside with my coffee, and I deadhead my flowers and prune as I drink my coffee. And then I will usually put on a nice shirt. Maybe not always, depending on how awake I am. And then, and then first I go through all of my email from my team, and then I go through all my email from my management chain, and then any other email directly to me. So I have a certain pattern of how I get through email, similar to that blog post you had written about how to do email effectively. I definitely used a lot of those ideas.
I see. I
Um,
see.
yeah, so like I make times if I have to respond to an email, takes a little bit more time. I do the same thing where I put it in my
Oh,
agenda. So,
yeah.
you don't like save to read later after you've already read it.
Yeah.
So that's been amazingly helpful. So I do that for the first few hours while I also sort of chat with teammates and kind of multitask on writing and reading and stuff.
Mhm.
And then I have a lot of meetings on Tuesday, Thursday, and I make Monday, Wednesday, Friday my main coding and writing days. So Tuesday, Thursday, I'm basically in meetings from like 10 to 6. One of my direct reports is in Australia, so I
Wow.
swing a bit later for him. And on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I tend to spend a lot of times on docs, either going through other people's docs and making comments or sort of writing my own. Right now, there's a few deadlines, paper deadlines that I'm working toward. So a lot of just iterating on sort of the narrative on a few different papers with the collaborators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite part of your day?
My favorite part of my day. I really love our team meetings. Uh, One of the nice things I think about this team that we have is that we all are sort of odd ducks in terms of tech. Uh, so our team is called the Ethical AI team, and everyone that's ended up joining are people who are just so passionate about it, who understand racism and sexism and things like this very directly in a lot of ways. But amongst ourselves, like there's a lot of trust because there's a lot of mutual understanding of these sort of like socio-technical and very like personally affecting issues. And so when we're all together, we tend to just have a lot of like inside jokes and, you know, just be really silly, like sharing gifts and stuff, just really kind of breaking up the seriousness of all the other work we're doing. So it ends up actually being like super, super cheery. We've had a few guests join our meetings and they're like, your team meetings are the best. Everyone seems to be enjoying themselves.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, so that's probably the best, just being able to interact with all the other people working in the space together. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the least favorite part of your day?
Going through email.
The first 4 hours of your day, you mean?
I hate it. Yeah, I hate it. It's terrible. I find it so tedious.
Oh.
Yeah, and I used to be better at it, but like also that would take all day. So to like speed up the time, I just try and get through it. And it's one of those things. It's like if you like cut off a head and like 3 heads, you know, grow back. Like sometimes you don't want to respond because that's just gonna mean more emails come back in response. So, like just trying to like keep moving on. Like maybe I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely the most tedious part.
Yeah. This might also answer the next one, but maybe you have a different answer. What one chore do you dislike the most, and why is that?
What's the what?
What's one chore that you dislike the most, and why is that?
Oh, I see. Well, I guess other than email, and speaking to your earlier question, earlier in the day, what I was doing is called calibration, which is where you have all the ratings for your direct reports, like how it's like the perf process, but you have to write. It's a very, very sort of intense process at Google. So the manager has to have like all of these notes with links and numbers and details. And then we go into these rooms and we argue together for what scores our report should be getting. And I just, yeah, I don't like doing that. I'm starting to do the lazy thing that older managers do, where I'm just like, tell me what to say and I will cut and paste it. Whereas like before I would like craft it together, but now I'm just like, I have this many words, you tell me. So yeah, I find that very tedious because it's not it's just, you know, it's more like bureaucratic kind of work, which is, you know, it's not research, it's not really learning. So that can be, I
Yeah.
think, pretty,
Yeah.
frustrating. More like a chore. Yeah.
Makes sense. Several people that I wrote to for this interview series are at Google, and multiple wrote back saying that wait for 2 weeks, I'm busy, and so maybe we can do this after that. So yeah, I figured,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I was in calibration all day yesterday and the first half of today.
wow,
So yeah, I
yeah,
understand that because we don't know how long it will last because everyone has to argue about everyone's, you know, different scores.
yeah, yeah.
So like yesterday, it went from 9 until like 6. I was
Wow,
like
wow,
not paying attention by the end.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do you struggle with procrastination?
No. Mm-mm. I mean, I've always kind of actually gone the opposite way, like an unhealthy amount of working on things, even when it's better to take a break. And, you know, oftentimes when you're procrastinating, it's like your body is telling you something like that it has to have its mind in another space for a bit in order to, you know, focus back on whatever it is that you're working on.
Hmm.
But it's taken me a while to accept, you know, taking breaks or even longer breaks like vacations as something that is good to do.
Hmm.
It's not something until, you know, maybe more recently that I realized that it's a weakness to keep working. It's a strength to be able to stop, you know. At least for some people, you know, like workaholic kind of people, like maybe me and you and like everyone else that, you know, works in the sort of CS field now. Um, but yeah, um, Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you struggle with time management?
No, I'm lucky because I don't really have other commitments like kids. Um, so that gives me a lot more freedom. If I can't finish something but need to, I can do it through the evening. Um, so yeah, that has
Yeah.
actually uh,
Yeah.
hasn't been too much of a problem.
Do you set an alarm in the morning?
Yes, I do. But my dog wakes me up 5 minutes before. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I think it's good actually because she's figured out how to shove her head under my arm in such a way that it pops up and then pets and then lands on her head.
Oh,
So I
wow.
wake up with her using my body to pet her. It's like a little weird, like you're definitely like you're just using me for my body. But it's also kind of a pleasant way to wake up.
Yeah.
So I do set an alarm, but usually the dog is the one who actually wakes me up.
Yeah. If I asked your friends, what is Meg like? What are three adjectives you think they'd use?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, you know what? One thing a lot of people independently say is that like that I'm very honest or that I have radical candor. I liked that one, radical candor. Brutally honest is another one I've gotten.
Hmm.
So that's yeah, I'm very bad at filtering and sort of figuring out the different, you know, professional, unprofessional registers and like when you hide your thoughts and when you don't.
Hmm.
I think I never really aced that. So definitely like candid or honest,
Hmm.
which can be said like a more negative or a more positive way, depending. Um, yeah, I've since we're doing performance reviews right now, I've been looking at my like the past things that people have said. Things like prolific uh, and tireless was another one I got,
Hmm.
uh, which is kind of bad. Like you want to be able to like take breaks and kind of speaking to what I said earlier.
Yeah.
Tireless is not necessarily a good uh, thing to have associated to you. Uh, so yeah, I would say maybe. So what did I say? Honest, prolific,
And
and
tireless.
tireless. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much of this do you think is true? Is anything exaggerated? Is anything missing?
Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I think one thing that sticks out to me when I meet and talk to lots of people at work is that I tend to joke around a lot, and so when I'm in meetings, like I'm sort of a clown. Like it's understood that I'll be like putting on like weird Snapchat filters or whatever while like everyone else is trying to have like an adult conversation. Um, so I would love if people also said that I was like hilarious, but I'm probably just kidding myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you happy with the number of close friends you have?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, yeah, I have some very close friends and friends who are not in academia or tech, which is super important for staying grounded, remembering, you know, larger values in the world, different values and things.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm never wanting for more friends. I'm never thinking that I wish I had another close friend to talk to.
Hmm.
I've actually sort of intentionally worked on having a set of friends that I can sort of talk to and vent to about different aspects of, um, you know, sexism in tech or like just, you know, feeling depressed about things. And so I have tried to create a little bit of a network of, you know, people I can talk to very closely so that no one person, no one friend has to deal with everything. But I have kind of like different topics all spread amongst the
Yeah.
different closer friends.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, it seems a
Yeah.
good amount.
What is one thing you're worse at than people around you?
What is one thing I'm worse at than people around me? I'm a lot worse at writing up like roadmaps and long-term plans. I'm very much like you say it's like fly by the seat of your pants kind of person. And other people are like, we have to know our milestones within the next month, where are we going? Like, what is the overall plan? Like, after we do this, what comes next? And I'm sort of more like, we'll see, we'll see. And that is, not everyone loves that. So yeah, I would say being clear about longer term goal setting in order to give people like specific paths of things to work on, I would say I'm not good. And a lot of people are much better at that than I am. Yeah.
What is your single biggest strength?
Trend?
Strength, your single biggest
Oh,
strength.
strength. My single biggest strength. I type very fast. I'm a fast typer.
Oh.
Yeah, that's probably pretty good. It helps get things done a little bit easier.
Yeah, helps with being prolific.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like an underlying factor for so many things. Getting through emails quicker.
Yeah.
It's a good strength to have. Yeah, I think that's just a main thing for now.
Yeah. What is a recurring moral conflict?
A recurring moral conflict? Moral conflict. I have sort of internal struggles relevant to morality, but I don't know about a specific moral conflict. I'm going to not exactly answer your question. I'll answer something slightly different because I've been thinking about it a lot more. But I struggle with working in an ethics space while also being at a corporation that has a drive to make profit, and that can be really at odds with like doing the right thing, being transparent. A lot of the things that we value in sort of the ethical AI space can really be at odds with sort of a capitalist kind of society or within these large corporations. And so it's a bit of a balancing act to figure out how to advance different kinds of ethics-based concepts forward within the company while also towing the line of this sort of counteracting goal that the company has. And so, it's required sort of some compromises. So, for example, I worked on the face recognition stuff, looking at like how well it worked and things like that. And we had to make the case about whether to launch it or not at all. I was on the don't launch at all camp. It was decided that they were going to launch in some way, but we had to figure out how. So then it was like, okay, if you are going to release face recognition in any way, like then what is the best way to do it? So in this case, it was decided that it can only be used for tracking actors and actresses in films. So those are the only people that can be recognized, and it's only given to media partners. So a specific use case. But that was part of kind of the release, which was like, okay, I don't think it should be released, but given that there is some good reasons in terms of the company to release it, what are then the right constraints to put on it? So it can be like a bit of a struggle between how do we do this the right way if we have to do it versus like making the case that we shouldn't do it at all.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Is there a specific instance where you distinctly recall feeling privileged?
Oh my God, every day. Like, okay, so the first like major okay, so, well, first off, the free food everywhere, like that's all amazing to me. Like everything is so clean and it's like modern office furniture everywhere. It's like nicer than anything, I didn't like have a fancy background, so all of like the furniture is like so nice and stuff. So that really, really is amazing to me. One of the moments of extreme privilege that I had was, I think it was my first day at the Google office in Seattle. I went to the cafe there to get, a hand pour fancy latte or whatever for free, like they do. And I said, you guys don't have chocolate chip cookies. I think we need chocolate chip cookies. And then the next day they had them. And then they made them part of the recurring set of things that they put out with the coffee. And then I came back next week and said, okay, but what if I want to take it back to my desk? And then they started putting out little paper bags to take the cookie with you to the desk. And so I started telling people, like, I've already made a huge impact here. Get those little bags. That was me. So that was just amazing to me that I could just like will cookies and then like will cookies to my office desk, and people just did it. I was just like, this is unreal.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you insecure about?
Oh, everything. I wouldn't say I feel terribly secure about anything. I do really struggle sometimes with giving talks. It depends on the situation and audience, but I have really terrible stage fright, and I get a lot of anxiety. My palms sweat and I shake. And so that can be really hard when I'm supposed to be an expert and supposed to be sounding like I know what I'm saying, but I can, my voice can start wiggling and I can sort of sound like maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. So I actually find it hardest when I'm talking to students. If I have a keynote or something, I feel like it's already given that I'm awesome or something. So somehow a keynote is less stressful to me than talking to students, because students are like there to judge and to learn and to ask hard questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like very terrifying. I'm very insecure. Whenever I've done like a guest lecture, guest class, that's the hardest. I'm very insecure.
Yeah. Do you feel like an imposter?
I haven't had too much problem with imposter syndrome. I'm trying to think like if there's anything. I definitely feel stupid a lot of the time. I mean, I work with so many brilliant people who have expertise in so many different areas that I don't have expertise in. So I quite commonly feel like I don't know much of anything. But I don't think I really have imposter syndrome at this point. I don't really feel like somehow I got here via luck. I feel like I got here via like harsh fighting and something else, or like persevering or something. So I think I had more imposter syndrome when I was a postdoc at Johns Hopkins. I was like, I shouldn't belong here. I'm just here because they wanted a diversity candidate or something. And a lot of the stuff they were talking about, I was like, I don't know what we're talking about. But now in my career, I don't think I feel like an imposter anymore.
Yeah. What is something you're trying out these days, and how is that going?
There's a few things. Maybe one of the more interesting things to talk about is I've been working a lot on creating water features outside. So like different ponds and fountains and different movements of water through the yard. It's actually really, really easy because all you have to do is get a pump, basically. You get a pump and a tube. You have to have a pump. You actually don't have to have a tube. You have to have a pump, and you have to be able to plug it into something. And as long as you have those two things, like you can make water do all kinds of crazy things. So I've set up lots of things with I have like driftwood and like some other kinds of wood and stuff. So it's sort of making it like a wooden water sculpture thing. But I also use a UV filter light so my dog can drink the water too. So it's constantly running, and then it has the UV filter so she can come drink it. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time on like water engineering or something outside. I don't know what to call it.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's been super fun, especially when it's hot, because then it's like all splashing on you and you're like, you know what, that's fine, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your favorite tool or trick or hack that makes your life more convenient or more efficient or more fun?
Oh. Hack that makes your life more convenient or more fun. don't know. One thing that makes my job a lot more fun is that I've been working outside a lot more, which has been pretty fun. Like, because I have, speaking of, because I have a garden with crazy water features, I'll take meetings with like things like going, like water just spouting around in the background. And so I think that's fun. And the people I talk to, if I'm here in my office, they'll be like, why aren't you outside? I want to see your family. So I'm not out there today because of the air quality, but that's definitely something that makes my job a lot more fun, even if it's not like a hack.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. What do you tend to think about most when you're not intentionally trying to think about something?
What do I tend to think about most? Oh, wait. When
So,
I'm trying not to think about something, what do I think about?
or even when you're not really trying to think about something, you're just sort of being or doing things and you're not actually trying to think about something, what kinds of things tend to pop up in your head that you end up thinking about?
Well, I think it depends sort of if what kind of mood I'm in. I mean, if I'm in maybe more realistic mood, I think about our president and the climate, and I'm worrying a lot about whether the election will actually be a real election. Trying to figure out if that means, like, as as someone who's born and raised in America, like, do I stay and fight in some way, or do I leave the country? So that ends up popping up a lot. It's messing with for the first time, my sense of identity of being an American is like being messed with in some way. So it's kind of hard to, like, I guess, articulate, but it's definitely like affecting me in a way I hadn't expected. So yeah, so my head pops into thinking about that kind of stuff a lot. And then when I'm sort of more just wanting to be happy or whatever, I just tend to talk about the dog. I mean, there's not a lot to be happy about right now, so I just like totally was like, oh, she did this and she did this. It's like 80% of my conversations with my partner is like, also the dog did this, because when we try and talk about the news, it's like, okay, well, nothing is good. Back to the dog. Yeah, so I would say those are the things. Yeah.
Yeah. What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us might not guess?
Um, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's that I sort of grew up in a Hollywood family, which is like not typical if you're in CS. My mom would do voiceover and playing guitar in movies where there had to be like a woman singing and playing guitar. My aunt she does metal work for props and costumes. She's like the top person in the Hollywood, LA area who does that. So she like did Michael Jackson's thing. She did like Rocky Balboa's belt, like she did all of these, like, she's like very high up there.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. So like, and my grandma was a dancer. My grandfather was in like Singing in the Rain, a ton of movies. He was also abroad. So I just grew up being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like an actress, singer, or something. And then I like went to one audition, and I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do this at all. And then I just got really lost into computers. But that means like I'm very different than the rest of my family and have a background that's kind of, I think, atypical for people who work in CS.
Yeah. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
What is one thing about the world that surprises me? One thing that I've been amazed by for a while is how many kinds of crabs there are in different kinds of places. I don't know if you watch the Planet Earth, specials, but like they had one where they were covering crabs. And there's crabs that are like in little flowers that will grow in little flowers, like little ones that are on the ground in forests and stuff, in addition to like water and stuff. And then, yeah, I didn't know how many kinds of crabs there were. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I didn't know that either. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. That's all I. That's the one thing.
Crafts. Yeah. Yeah. Um, what is the most recent unexpected thing that happened?
Unexpected thing that happened. Oh, one of my work colleagues mailed me natural wine. I don't know if you've heard of natural wine, but apparently it's like this maybe new movement on the West Coast, where the wine is like there's nothing additional added to it in the fermenting process. There's
Hmm.
something about sulfites that is important that I kind of forgot. Either that it has sulfites or that it doesn't. The plants are all organic and stuff. And I like wine and when I was in Scotland, I became a whiskey connoisseur, took it upon myself. So I'm kind of well versed in sort of alcohol stuff. So a friend bought me some of these natural wines and sent them to me, which I didn't
Hmm.
expect. They
Yeah,
looked very fancy. They were
I see.
horrible,
Oh, I was
but
going to ask how were they? I
they
see.
were terrible, absolutely disgusting. One was like it seemed like carbonated, which I did not expect. Like it was like a rosé, but it was like super carbonated.
Oh,
The other one was really sweet.
I
Yeah, so it
see.
was terrible, but it was a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what is one way in which you wish your life was different?
Um, I want to live farther out from the city. I really want to have land. I don't like cities, and I don't. I feel very strange about having neighbors that are like 2 yards on either side, which is really. I mean, that's a very common house setup, at least. I mean, maybe not in Ohio. I can think of places like Ohio. It's much anyway. But having houses, neighborhoods that have houses that are just like a few yards from one another is quite common. And it never bothered me before, but recently I'm just thinking like, I can't believe I'm spending years living a couple yards from these people. That's a very strange thing. Like we should either be friends or I should be having like land around me. So at least I'm not intentionally being antisocial.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been looking a lot to try and find if I could somehow have a place where I can have just a bunch of land around me, and be a bit more out of the city.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
What are you looking forward to tomorrow or next week?
Well, tomorrow or next week. Next week, we're doing a workathon sprint hackathon for a research idea that we've had some publications about, but we want to make like a demo and a tool. So next week, a group of us in the team are just going to remotely work for 2 or 3 days to try and trying to get out an example tool.
Hmm.
So I think that will be fun. It'll be fun to like sit around and code with everyone and just exchange ideas in real time. Like hackathons are always fun. Workathon is maybe a good word to use because we have social scientists on our team who aren't necessarily going to code,
Hmm.
but provide other sorts of resources, like different kinds of concepts to focus on and things like this.
Hmm.
So I'm really looking forward to that next
Yeah.
week. Yeah, this weekend the only plan is to figure out how to get rid of the rats we've started seeing. So
I
that's
see.
not good fun. Yeah,
Oh,
because you can kill accidentally squirrels and stuff like that. And
I see.
anyway, I've been doing a lot of research on this. I can tell you all about killing rats. Maybe you already know. Anyway, I'm not looking forward to that this weekend, but that's this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you're average, above average, below average, happy relative to people around you?
Oh. It's a weird time right now. So that's really hard to say. Like how people are feeling right now isn't, I think, generally how people's sort of moods and behaviors tend to go,
Hmm.
like, more in their life. So I have tons of friends who are fighting. Like everyone seems to be kind of on edge and quick to anger, a lot more quick to anger.
Hmm.
Um, but I haven't been feeling that way for whatever reason. So I think maybe right now I'm a little bit more happy than a lot of people. In general, though, I'm a pessimist and dwell a lot more on negative things. So maybe more generally, I tend to be less happy. But I think for some reason right now, I mean, it seems to be that I'm like one of the like few cheery people in the group of people I talk to. That's a little bit strange.
Yeah.
But I would say normally I tend to be less than and just like very negative. But yeah, things are okay right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was the last time you danced?
I don't dance a lot. I used to take lessons, you know, growing up as a kid with my like Hollywood family or whatever. I took dance lessons for like 10 years.
Wow.
They didn't work. Uh, yeah, it's been years.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the last time I danced might have been like New Year's 3 years ago after drinking a lot. I can't really recall dancing at all after that. I'm not a big dancing person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your most recent dream that you remember?
Mm. Mm. I've been having stress dreams about work, so that's kind of boring. Um, One dream that is kind of interesting, it wasn't that recent, it was actually last year, but it stuck with me because it was so weird. Um, I was down in San Francisco doing a writing sprint it was for Last Fact conference, or it was called Fat Star then.
Mhm.
And so, like, all of us were there, a ton of us were there in the San Francisco office. We stayed until like 5 a.m. or something. But then I was supposed to be out of the hotel that I was staying at like 10. So we finished around 5. I went to the hotel, I went to sleep. And then I had a dream that people were like knocking on my hotel. I had a dream that I was in the hotel room and people were like knocking on the hotel room door, telling me like I have to get out. And then I'm like rushing, like throwing everything in like my suitcase and it's not fitting. And I'm just like so stressed, like, oh, I have to get out, you know, and like blah, blah. And then I woke up to people knocking on my door, telling me I
Oh,
had to get
wow.
out. And literally, like, I had the dream and then it happened exactly like that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I had to be stressed about it twice. But that was kind of because you often have dreams like it'll be like kind of like what happened, but this was like almost like
Exactly.
completely predicting everything.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think you probably have stress dreams about like having to be somewhere, like packing,
Uh-huh.
whatever, like you're supposed to be in like Greece or something, but you're like still in San Francisco and you're supposed to give a talk in like an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of dreams like that, but this one where it was all about packing and people knocking at the door was a little bit different and
Yeah.
identical to what happened. So yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. Um, do you think there is a point to life, or our existence?
Mm, I mean, I don't think that there's like a greater plan. We can sort of create our own points individually, but at like a higher level general thing, I see us as, you know, organisms that have evolved and that will go away and others will come. And I don't know, that kind of helps work on AI, because if you feel like human intelligence is not like preordained in some way, or that it's just kind of unremarkable following from evolutionary patterns, then it's like easier to be like, oh, and I'm going to make intelligence from AI because easy, it's like same thing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess at a high level, no.
Mhm. Yeah. What do you struggle with in life?
What do I struggle with? I have had a lot of problems with depression and anxiety. And that can be you know, that can make it difficult when you're supposed to be interacting with people or like leading people, you know, and you're supposed to like seem up and, you know, but that's created a lot of problems. It's normally sort of focused internally, like, you know, just criticizing myself and stuff. Like there's a bully in my head. I think a lot of people sort of describe it as something like that. So yeah, I've struggled with like not letting the bully, I guess, sort of control me more, or like, you know, change the things that are important to me or whatever. But yeah, that's been a problem, especially when you're like supposed to be happy and up, and you're absolutely not that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you decide what to work on?
I tend to just do the things that matter the most to me. So I've just sort of followed a trajectory where I've like dug further and further into how to like evolve AI in a long-term positive way. And so anything I find in my path that is unsolved or particularly messy, for some reason I end up working on really messy things. Yeah, I end up taking those on. I'm a little bit surprised at how much I've ended up focusing on launching things at Google. I didn't know that I would be that I didn't know I'd be that pulled into product. But it's kind of a situation where, in light of like long-term positive goals, like, you know, we can make this change and affect like 2 billion users. Maybe I don't need to write this paper. Maybe it's better that I like implement this and make this real. So yeah, it's kind of, I tend to just sort of think through like how do I maximize the goodness or the long-term benefit of the work I'm doing, and then sort of choose projects that way. Which means I work on data ethics and face recognition, like the worst, like most difficult things to work on AI ethics right now. But I think that kind of appeals to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are two common traits across some of the best collaborators or colleagues you've worked with?
Well, humility is definitely one. When there's like someone who's trying to assert like a strong alpha personality, that has not worked. I kind of ruffle at authority, and I think that will also sort of can go over to collaborators who sort of act like they're authorities. So yeah, humility is one. I would say also just passion and being really involved in the project, like just really caring about it. You know, I've had a lot of collaborators where, you know, you end up doing most of the work, or, you know, they're clearly sort of phoning it in. But I've also had amazing collaborations with people who care deeply about the work, and put a lot of time into it. So yeah, I think those are probably the two. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you spot these traits? Like, can you spot them early, and do you think you're good at spotting them?
The strengths in a collaborator?
Yeah, the humility and caring about the work.
Yeah, I mean, if you work with someone, even for a week or so, you can sort of get a sense of where their head is at, in terms of the work. So I think that's been relatively straightforward. I don't think I've like intentionally seeked out. That sounds wrong.
I don't know. Yeah.
Sought.
Sought. Yeah.
Sorry, it's smoky. My head is so fuzzy. I don't know what's happening. Sought. Yes, I haven't sought out. Look at me nailing my native language. Collaborators like who have these properties, but I just like naturally end up working with people like that. So
Yeah.
it sort of naturally falls into place. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Oceans or hills?
Hills.
Hills. Um, what is something you love doing that you're terrible at?
That is a good question. I feel like there's a lot of answers, possible answers to that. I mean, so one thing I do like as a sort of creative outlet or whatever is I make like little comics and like on the computer I'll do stuff like comic strips and just pictures that are sort of funny that capture different moments I've had. But I'm a terrible artist. And it's arguably like the stuff I'm making isn't actually that funny. So I don't really share it. I enjoy doing it. It's sort of cathartic. But I would not say it is a strength.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like paint drawings. It's like stick figures. So like,
I see.
yeah, it's fun, but I suck at it.
What is something you did recently that surprised some of the people who know you well?
So Europe recently put out a European strategy for data. And so as someone who like is fascinated by data ethics and stuff, I read their like a 34-page report or whatever. And then they had a corresponding white paper that was like maybe 1 or 2 pages. And so most people sort of in our reading group or whatever had read the white paper that was 1 or 2 pages, but I had read like the full thing and we were arguing about it. And I was saying like, Europe is saying that they want to have a data commons where everybody can access the same data and they can duplicate the data and it's shared. And I was just going off about how terrible I thought this was. And everyone else in the room were like, aren't you more of like a socialist person? Why don't you see that? Are you arguing that private corporations should like own this data itself without any sharing? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I mean, I can like, well, this is a very long conversation, but I took, I think, a much more conservative stance on that than everyone else I worked with thought I would be taking. And I was surprised that they were surprised. It was sort of mutual. But yeah, I had like lots of very strong opinions about how I didn't think this data should be sort of government regulated in this specific way. And yeah, that was really, I think, a surprise to everyone.
Yeah. When was the last time you felt like a kid in a candy store?
So there's this candy store at SFO Airport that okay. I used to go through SFO all the time, like maybe once a month. And it was always like the same area because of the plane. Anyway, there was this candy shop that was the only candy shop I've ever found that had chocolate covered peaches. You know, like you can get like chocolate covered blueberries that are like blue color, like chocolate covered cherries or like they had chocolate covered peaches. And so I would always go in before I got on my plane. I would just buy like a massive bag of them and then I like bring them to Seattle. Like, I have brought you from afar. You know. Anyway, I would always have so much fun doing that. I would look forward to leaving so I could do that. But last time I went, they had stopped selling them. So I said that I wanted to complain to the manager. I was like, I came from far away to this one candy shop for this one thing. And they were like, we'll think about it. We're like literally the only person buying this. So.
Yeah, not the same reaction.
What?
I was gonna say not the same reaction as the chocolate chip cookies at the coffee place.
Yeah. I'm used to my privilege. I'm like, what? I ask and it appears. Yeah, I do actually like candy shops. I find them very fun. I'm vegetarian, so I can't eat a lot of it, but I'll get the
Yeah.
stuff I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what is something that you did not like at the time, but you are glad happened?
Um, hmm. Hmm. And this can be any, like, I guess anything
Anything.
in
Yeah.
work or life or anything.
Yeah.
Mm, hmm. I think that's hard for me to answer. I'll answer with something fairly random. So on my desk is this thingy, which is like one of the random swags you get like at a conference at someone's thing. And I always thought that it was such a piece of trash. Like I didn't even know what it was. I like didn't even know where I got it. But now that I have a 3-monitor setup with
Uh-huh.
multiple ports, I realize that you
Oh,
put the ports through it. Like I don't know, can you see? Like this,
yeah. Yeah. I see.
and it holds it
Huh.
in place so I can move my laptop and then put it back and just plug all the cords
Uh-huh.
for the monitors because it just holds it
Yeah.
in place.
I
And so
see.
it went from being like this piece of trash to like this is an amazing tool. I don't know how I ever lived
Yeah.
without this.
Yeah. But how did you figure out that you could use it this way?
I'm pretty
You just,
smart. I was just staring at it and was like, hey. Yeah.
oh, oh. What do you easily get nostalgic about?
Um, I get nostalgic, I guess, when I listen to music because it'll put me right at a place and time. Um, in terms of like a specific time, I had a really awesome part of my life um, between undergrad and master's. I had 2 years where I worked at kind of like a computational linguistics sort of think tank place. Um, and it was in Portland, and I was driving at the time, and it was just a lovely place to work. And I would drive home, and the sun would be setting, and I was like in my favorite city, and I was like well paid with like a cool job that's related to where I wanted to go. I had just started dating my partner at the time, so it really felt like everything was like as it should be, like coming together. So those 2 years was like I think a really, really nice time where things just felt sort of right.
Hmm.
So I still think about that time period quite a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're down to our last few questions.
Okay.
Describe something that has made you smile today.
Uh, I don't want to talk about my dog too much, but she's like the thing that makes me smile. So
Oh,
so today, um, she like did not want to go outside, which is probably because of the maybe Eric. But then I went to go. I don't know. I was next to the door, and so she got excited because she thought we were going outside, and so I like opened the door to let her go outside, and she like walked out. She took like 2 steps, and her ears went back, and she like sniffed, and then she like walked back into the house. And I was like, that's how I feel, man. You're capturing the sentiment perfectly.
yeah,
Yeah, so that made me
yeah,
smile.
yeah. What is some of the best advice you've either gotten or given?
I think some of the most useful advice that I follow, I've given it, I don't know maybe where I got it. I think I've gotten it from various places, but it's that not to be intimidated by people who seem like they really know what they're talking about, or not to feel like just because someone sounds very confident that they know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
I think that was hard to learn, like going into tech and stuff. Being in meetings and there'd be like these people like very strongly stating opinions and like this needs to go this way and this way, and you Like I would just feel like, oh, they seem to know what they're talking about. Like my ideas are wrong. You know, I won't even bring them up or whatever. But then I learned like actually sometimes there seems to be like an inverse relationship where the more confident someone is, the more wrong the ideas can often be. Like
Yeah.
trying to make up for the lack of reasoning with just like strength of voice or something.
Right.
But yeah, so I think like it's not to be ruffled by people who sound like they know a lot what they're people who sound like very confident
Mm-hmm.
in what they're talking about, if it's different than what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Being as honest as possible, why did you agree to do this interview with me?
Because I like you. I haven't talked to you in a while. I think the whole idea is really awesome. I always find, finding out about the people behind the research really,
Yeah.
really fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
seemed cool, and I like you, so.
Yeah. And my last question, is there anything you'd like to talk about in terms of who you are, what your life is like that we didn't cover?
Oh, no, I don't think so. It's like this is like a cool, yeah, tour de force of lots of different kinds of aspects of my life. I think yeah, we've covered
Yeah.
nothing else to
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. Yeah. That's everything I had. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you in a bit.
All right, see you.
Yeah.